Every trip to the grocery store now feels like a shock to the wallet. Tomatoes that cost $2 a pound just a few weeks ago are closer to $3. A basic refrigerator is suddenly hundreds of dollars more expensive. And it's not because of inflation or supply chain chaos. This time, tariffs are quietly driving everyday prices higher. From groceries to appliances, the cost of living in 2025 is being reshaped by new import taxes. Shoppers are starting to notice, and the frustration is growing. Some families are cutting back on fresh produce, while others are delaying big purchases like washing machines or laptops. In this episode, we're breaking down exactly how tariffs are hitting your shopping list, and you'll hear real voices from consumers who are feeling the pinch every single day. Prices in 2025 are no longer just a reflection of inflation or supply chain disruptions. They're being shaped directly by tariffs, and the impact is now visible on nearly every shopping receipt. Consumers across the United States are facing an unfamiliar reality. The same basket of groceries, household goods, and electronics now costs noticeably more, and the difference is not a matter of a few cents. It's several dollars, sometimes even hundreds. One of the clearest examples is in fresh produce. Tomatoes imported from Mexico, which supply nearly 70% of the US market, have become significantly more expensive after a 17% tariff was reinstated earlier this year. Supermarkets have adjusted prices almost immediately. A shopper in Texas reported seeing the price of a pound of tomatoes jump from 2.20 cents to 2.90 cents in just a week. Other produce categories are feeling similar pressure, with avocados, berries, and bananas, much of which come from Latin America, projected to rise by 10 to 15%, according to recent warnings from Walmart executives. These increases may not sound dramatic, but for households that buy fresh produce regularly, the impact on monthly food budgets is substantial. The appliance sector is under even heavier strain. Tariffs of 50% on imported steel and aluminum have rippled through the entire supply chain, hitting the cost of refrigerators, washing machines, dishwashers, and other major appliances. A store owner in Michigan shared that the price of a mid-range refrigerator has jumped by more than $200 since June. Customers who plan to replace old machines are now reconsidering, opting for repairs instead of upgrades. Industry analysts say the US appliance market has already seen price hikes of 10 to 20% across popular brands. Appliance retailers, especially smaller independent stores, are struggling to keep inventory affordable while competing with big box chains that can better absorb the additional cost. Essential household items like paper products are also affected. Toilet paper brands such as Charmin and Bounty, which rely on raw materials from Canada and Latin America, have been hit with tariffs up to 35%. Although manufacturers and retailers are trying to spread the cost increases gradually, consumers have already noticed higher prices for bulk packs and everyday essentials. For low-income families or those living on fixed incomes, even a $1 increase in staple products adds pressure to already tight budgets. Electronics are another category feeling the weight of tariffs. Laptops imported from China have seen projected price jumps of up to 46%, while smartphones are expected to rise by roughly 26%. For families preparing for the back-to-school season or students heading to college, this means paying as much as $150 to $200 more for devices that were affordable just a year ago. A college student in California commented online, "I'm putting off buying a new laptop because the prices are insane. It's like you're being punished for needing technology to study." The automotive sector is no exception. Tariffs of 25% on imported vehicles and auto parts have pushed average car prices up by approximately $4,700 per vehicle, according to estimates from major car makers like Ford and BMW. For consumers, this not only means higher sticker prices, but also higher financing costs due to increased interest rates. Used cars, which are often a fallback option, are also becoming more expensive as demand shifts. What makes this situation particularly striking is how quickly these price adjustments have reached consumers. Tariffs are typically seen as a political tool aimed at foreign producers, but in reality, retailers and manufacturers pass these costs down the chain almost immediately. From the aisles of neighborhood grocery stores to online electronics retailers, there is little room to shield shoppers from the impact. The sentiment among consumers is increasingly one of frustration. While economic indicators like GDP growth and employment rates might suggest stability, household budgets tell a different story. Rising costs of essentials, groceries, household goods, electronics, are cutting into disposable income and altering spending habits. People are buying less, switching to store-brand products, and delaying non-essential purchases. A mother of two in Ohio summed it up during a local news interview. "Every time I go shopping, I have to put something back. It's either fresh produce or snacks for my kids. It's exhausting to keep adjusting." Businesses, especially smaller retailers, are also voicing concerns. Many are forced to increase prices just to stay afloat, knowing this risks driving customers to cheaper competitors or big-box stores. An independent kitchenware shop owner in Oregon explained that their margins have shrunk dramatically since tariffs began to affect wholesale costs. "We've seen wholesale prices rise by at least 15%, and that's before shipping and local taxes. We can't just absorb that. Customers get upset, but there's no alternative." The mood in affected industries is tense. Retailers are bracing for another wave of increases as new tariff schedules roll out in the coming months. Some companies are stockpiling inventory to buy time, but this strategy has limits. Perishable goods can't be stored indefinitely, and storage costs for appliances or electronics only add to the final price. The reality is that tariffs are not abstract policy levers. They are immediate, visible, and painful in the everyday lives of Americans. Whether it's a grocery run, a planned appliance upgrade, or even the purchase of a family car, the financial impact is felt across the board. For millions of families, the question is no longer whether prices will rise. It's how to stretch every paycheck far enough to keep up. To understand why prices on everyday goods are climbing so steeply, we have to look at the underlying drivers of these tariffs and the ripple effects they create. Tariffs at their core are import taxes. When the US government imposes a tariff on goods coming from other countries, whether tomatoes from Mexico or steel from China, it effectively increases the cost for importers and retailers. These businesses rarely absorb the cost themselves. Instead, they pass it along to consumers in the form of higher prices. The current wave of tariffs is part of a broader trade strategy aimed at protecting American industries and reducing dependency on foreign imports. The administration argues that domestic manufacturers need a competitive edge to survive against cheaper products from countries with lower labor and production costs. In theory, tariffs make imported goods more expensive, pushing consumers to buy American-made products. But the reality is not that simple. For many products like fresh produce, electronics, or certain appliances, there are no easy domestic alternatives. The US simply doesn't grow enough tomatoes in the off-season, and it doesn't manufacture the bulk of affordable laptops or smartphones. So when tariffs hit, consumers have little choice but to pay more. The effects are magnified by how deeply global supply chains are interconnected. Take the appliance industry. Even when a refrigerator is assembled in the US, many of its components, compressors, wiring, steel panels, are sourced from abroad. A 50% tariff on imported steel doesn't just affect foreign-made appliances, it drives up the raw material costs for American factories too. The end result is that both imported and domestic products become more expensive. Policy decisions also play a role. In the last year, trade negotiations between the US and its major partners, China, Mexico, Canada, and the European Union, have hit repeated roadblocks. Instead of reaching new trade agreements, the US government has chosen to increase tariffs on a wide range of goods, from agricultural products to electronics. These moves are intended to exert pressure on foreign governments, but the timing is critical. With inflation already a concern and household budgets stretched thin, even modest tariff increases are amplifying consumer frustration. Economists have pointed out that tariffs function like a hidden tax on consumers. Unlike income taxes, which are paid directly and visibly, tariffs are buried in the price of goods. A shopper may not realize that a pound of tomatoes costs 50 cents more because of a tariff, but when multiplied across dozens of items in a weekly grocery run, the financial hit becomes clear. According to recent surveys, the average American household could pay an extra $1,000 to $1,500 per year due to tariff-related price increases, depending on their shopping habits and region. Another reason tariffs are having such a widespread effect is the limited ability of businesses to absorb the costs. Large retailers like Walmart or Home Depot can negotiate better terms with suppliers and use their size to keep prices competitive, at least in the short term. Small and mid-sized businesses, however, don't have the same leverage. When their wholesale costs rise, they either have to raise prices or risk cutting into their already thin profit margins. This dynamic is especially visible in sectors like kitchenware shops, local furniture stores, or regional grocery chains, where competition with national players is fierce. Psychological factors are also at play. When consumers expect prices to rise, they tend to buy less or delay purchases, which affects overall demand. This behavior can further stress small businesses, leading to reduced revenue and, in some cases, closures. Some families are postponing big-ticket purchases like washing machines or cars, waiting to see if tariffs will ease. Others are stocking up on staples like canned goods or household products, anticipating future price hikes. This creates unpredictable demand patterns, which retailers struggle to manage. Moreover, tariffs don't impact all products equally. Items like fresh produce are affected almost immediately because the supply chain is short and perishable. For durable goods like electronics or appliances, the price increases might take a few months to fully show up, as retailers work through existing inventory. But once that buffer runs out, the higher costs hit all at once. Finally, tariffs are as much about politics as they are about economics. Trade tensions with China, disputes over agricultural exports with Mexico, and ongoing debates with the European Union have turned tariffs into a bargaining chip. While these policies are meant to protect American jobs, their long-term effectiveness remains a subject of debate. Some manufacturing sectors may benefit, but for consumers and small retailers, the immediate reality is higher costs and fewer choices. What's happening now is a chain reaction. Tariffs increase import costs, businesses raise prices to stay afloat, and consumers are left paying the difference. The grocery aisle and the electronics store have become ground zero for these trade policies, and everyday Americans are feeling the consequences with every checkout line. The impact of rising tariffs is not evenly distributed across the United States. It's felt most acutely by families with moderate or low incomes, small businesses that lack pricing power, and regions heavily dependent on imported goods. For millions of Americans, the effects are tangible in their daily lives, from grocery bills that climb every week to delayed purchases of major household items. Low and middle-income families are the hardest hit. When the cost of essentials like fresh produce, paper goods, or household cleaners rises even slightly, it disrupts already tight budgets. According to recent data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, nearly 60% of American households are living paycheck to paycheck. For these families, an extra $10 or $20 per grocery trip adds up to hundreds of dollars a year. A single mother in Ohio described it bluntly during a local news segment. "I used to buy fresh tomatoes, peppers, and berries every week. Now I only buy what's on sale, and sometimes I switch to frozen vegetables because it's cheaper." This shift in buying habits is becoming increasingly common, with many shoppers trading down to store brands or cutting back on non-essential items like snacks or beverages. Small business owners are also bearing the brunt of these tariffs. Independent grocery stores, local appliance dealers, and small kitchenware shops simply don't have the purchasing power of major retailers. When wholesale prices go up due to tariffs, these businesses must either absorb the loss, cutting into already thin profit margins, or pass the cost on to customers. A kitchen supply store owner in Oregon recently explained, "We've seen the wholesale cost of stainless steel pots and pans rise by 15% since the tariffs hit. We can't eat that cost, but when we raise prices, customers accuse us of price gouging. It's a no-win situation." Many small businesses report that foot traffic is down because customers are comparison shopping and turning to big box stores like Walmart or online giants like Amazon, which can keep prices slightly lower thanks to their scale. Rural communities face a unique challenge. In smaller towns where fresh produce and imported goods already cost more due to transportation expenses, tariffs have made the problem worse. A family living in rural Iowa might now pay significantly more for staples like avocados or oranges, while incomes in these areas remain relatively stagnant. Rural grocery stores often carry fewer brands, giving shoppers limited options to seek out lower-cost alternatives. Some rural households are resorting to bulk buying or driving longer distances to bigger stores in nearby cities, adding fuel costs to their list of expenses. Students and young professionals are also feeling squeezed, particularly when it comes to electronics. With laptops, tablets, and smartphones seeing price hikes of up to 30 or 40%, college students and remote workers face tough choices. A student at a university in California posted online, "I saved up for a laptop all summer, and now it costs almost $200 more. I'm debating whether to buy used or wait it out." For young professionals relying on technology to work from home, these price jumps are both frustrating and unavoidable. Automotive consumers have not been spared either. Tariffs of 25% on imported vehicles and parts have pushed the price of a new car up by an estimated $4,000 to $5,000, depending on the model. This is particularly challenging for middle-class families looking for affordable sedans or compact SUVs. Even used car prices are climbing as demand for cheaper options increases. Car dealerships are reporting slower sales and higher inventory levels as customers delay purchases or opt for less expensive models. Regional disparities have also emerged. Border states like Texas and Arizona, which import large quantities of fresh produce from Mexico, are seeing sharper increases in food prices than other parts of the country. Meanwhile, coastal states like California, which rely heavily on imported electronics and appliances, are experiencing steeper jumps in consumer technology prices. For states in the Midwest or South, the pressure is more noticeable in automotive and agricultural products. Another group feeling the heat is service workers and low-wage earners, whose paychecks are not keeping pace with the cost of living. While tariffs are intended to support domestic industries and potentially create jobs, the benefits are unevenly distributed. Workers in retail and hospitality, for example, don't gain from these policies but still pay the price at the checkout counter. The chain reaction is visible everywhere. Higher grocery bills lead to smaller discretionary budgets, which means fewer restaurant outings, reduced spending on clothing, and postponed vacations. Local economies feel the pinch as consumers cut back on spending that supports small businesses and service industries. A grocery store manager in Michigan noted that their store saw a 12% decline in average transaction value over the past 3 months, a clear sign that shoppers are buying less to cope with rising costs. The emotional toll is real as well. A family living in rural Iowa might now pay significantly more for staples like avocados or oranges, while incomes in these areas remain relatively stagnant. Rural grocery stores often carry fewer brands, giving shoppers limited options to seek out lower-cost alternatives. Some rural households are resorting to bulk buying or driving longer distances to bigger stores in nearby cities, adding fuel costs to their list of expenses. Students and young professionals are also feeling squeezed, particularly when it comes to electronics. With laptops, tablets, and smartphones seeing price hikes of up to 30 or 40%, college students and remote workers face tough choices. A student at a university in California posted online, "I saved up for a laptop all summer, and now it costs almost $200 more. I'm debating whether to buy used or wait it out." For young professionals relying on technology to work from home, these price jumps are both frustrating and unavoidable. Automotive consumers have not been spared either. Tariffs of 25% on imported vehicles and parts have pushed the price of a new car up by an estimated $4,000 to $5,000, depending on the model. This is particularly challenging for middle-class families looking for affordable sedans or compact SUVs. Even used car prices are climbing as demand for cheaper options increases. Car dealerships are reporting slower sales and higher inventory levels as customers delay purchases or opt for less expensive models. Regional disparities have also emerged. Border states like Texas and Arizona, which import large quantities of fresh produce from Mexico, are seeing sharper and sharper increases in food prices than other parts of the country. Meanwhile, coastal states like California, which rely heavily on imported electronics and appliances, are experiencing steeper jumps in consumer technology prices. For states in the Midwest or South, the pressure is more noticeable in automotive and agricultural products. Another group feeling the heat is service workers and low-wage earners, whose paychecks are not keeping pace with the cost of living. While tariffs are intended to support domestic industries and potentially create jobs, the benefits are unevenly distributed. Workers in retail and hospitality, for example, don't gain from these policies but still pay the price at the checkout counter. The chain reaction is visible everywhere. Higher grocery bills lead to smaller discretionary budgets, which means fewer restaurant outings, reduced spending on clothing, and postponed vacations. Local economies feel the pinch as consumers cut back on spending that supports small businesses and service industries. A grocery store manager in Michigan noted that their store saw a 12% decline in average transaction value over the past 3 months, a clear sign that shoppers are buying less to cope with rising costs. The emotional toll is real as well. People are expressing frustration, confusion, and even anger at seeing prices rise, while being told that tariffs are supposed to help American workers. For many, the connection between trade policy and everyday expenses feels abstract, until they are standing at the cash register watching the total climb. The reality is that no single group is completely shielded from these effects. From urban professionals trying to upgrade their appliances to rural families buying groceries, tariffs are touching nearly every corner of American life. The question now is not just who pays the most, but how long households and small businesses can absorb these rising costs before it fundamentally changes how they live, work, and spend. Behind the statistics and price charts are real Americans trying to make sense of why their bills are climbing. Tariffs, for many, are not a headline or a policy debate. They are the reason why a family dinner now costs more, or why a long-planned purchase is suddenly out of reach. In conversations with consumers and small business owners, one sentiment echoes repeatedly, frustration mixed with a sense of helplessness. Take the voice of Sarah Mitchell, a single mother in Ohio. She says grocery shopping has turned into a mental battle. Last month, I paid almost $50 more on my weekly groceries compared to spring. Tomatoes, avocados, even coffee, it's all gone up. I'm not buying anything fancy, just what we need to get by. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, these extra costs hurt in a way that's hard to describe. Her story reflects what millions of families are facing, cutting back on fresh produce, relying more on frozen goods, or skipping non-essential snacks just to stay within budget. In Michigan, David Alvarez, who owns a small appliance store, talks about the pressure on his business. The tariffs have hit us like a hammer. We had to increase the price of a standard refrigerator by about $200 since June. Customers think we're just gouging them, but we're barely covering the extra cost from suppliers. I had a couple walk out last week because they saw the same fridge online for less, but that price will go up too once the inventory runs out. David says his sales have dropped nearly 30% in just 2 months, and he's now worried about how long his shop can survive if tariffs stay in place. On social media, the frustration is loud and unfiltered. In a popular Reddit thread about appliance prices, one user wrote, "Tariffs will mess up prices on literally everything, and they will never come back down." Others chimed in with similar stories. One student in California explained how the cost of a new laptop for college jumped by nearly $180 since the start of summer. "I thought I was saving up enough money, but every time I check, the price is higher," the post read, followed by dozens of comments from people in the same boat. Farmers are also speaking out. In border states like Texas and Arizona, where produce imports from Mexico are critical, local retailers are warning that prices will rise even more as tariffs filter through the supply chain. Juan Ortega, a grocery store manager in El Paso, says, "When the price of tomatoes goes up by 50 cents a pound, customers blame us. They don't see the paperwork we get every week with new tariffs and higher wholesale prices. People come to me asking for cheaper options. but I don't have magic tomatoes. Some consumers have begun to adjust their shopping habits in ways that highlight the psychological toll of rising prices. Linda Hayes, a retired teacher in North Carolina, explained, "I used to buy brand-name paper products like Charmin. Now I buy the store brand. It's not about preference anymore, it's about necessity. Every small change adds up. It feels like we're all getting nickel and dimed." This kind of sentiment is echoed by surveys showing a growing number of Americans aiming for generic products and cutting back on discretionary spending. The impact is just as personal for young professionals and remote workers. Mark Thompson, a software engineer working from home in California, described how the price of electronics is affecting him. "My old laptop is failing, but replacing it will cost me about 30% more than last year. Even accessories like keyboards and monitors are more expensive because of tariffs on imported components. It feels like everything I need for work is caught up in this trade war." Business voices add another layer of concern. A restaurant owner in Arizona shared that produce costs have surged so much that menu prices had to be raised twice in one summer. "Customers complain, but what else can we do? If we don't raise prices, we lose money on every plate. It's not greed, it's survival," she said. Restaurants that depend on fresh ingredients from across the border are particularly vulnerable, and some are already reducing menu options to control costs. There's also a growing unease among parents preparing for back-to-school shopping. Electronics, clothing, and even sports equipment have all seen price bumps. A mother in Chicago commented during a local radio call-in show, "It's not just groceries or big appliances. I'm paying more for sneakers, backpacks, and school supplies. These tariffs are supposed to protect jobs, but for us, it feels like another tax." Despite these struggles, many Americans admit they don't fully understand how tariffs work. They only know that their money doesn't stretch as far as it used to. The frustration is compounded by the feeling that there's no immediate relief in sight. As one shopper in Oregon put it, "We're not politicians, we're just trying to live. If these policies are meant to help, I'd like someone to explain how paying more for basic groceries is helping my family." These voices, taken together, paint a vivid picture of life under rising tariffs. They show how policy decisions in Washington translate into real-world trade-offs. Fewer fresh fruits on the table, delayed home upgrades, and constant anxiety over every trip to the store. The disconnect between macroeconomic goals and microeconomic realities has never felt more personal for everyday Americans. The story of tariffs in 2025 is still unfolding, and its conclusion remains uncertain. For now, what's clear is that the cost of living is no longer shaped by inflation alone. It's being reshaped by trade policies that are far removed from the everyday lives of consumers. The tension between political strategy and household reality is growing sharper with each passing month, as shoppers weigh what to buy, what to cut, and how to stretch their paychecks in a climate of rising prices. The question on many minds is whether these tariffs will deliver the promised benefits of protecting American industries. In theory, higher import costs should make domestic goods more competitive, potentially boosting US manufacturing and creating jobs. But for most consumers, those benefits remain invisible. Instead, they see price tags creeping upward and choices shrinking on store shelves. For a family in Ohio or Texas, the trade dispute with China or Mexico is not a political talking point. It's the reason dinner costs 20% more, and the reason a new washing machine is suddenly out of budget. Some economists warn that the longer tariffs remain in place, the more entrenched these price increases will become. Unlike temporary supply chain disruptions, tariffs tend to set a new baseline for costs, and prices rarely return to pre-tariff levels, even if the policies are eventually reversed. This is because businesses often adjust their pricing models permanently to account for higher input costs and logistical risks. Consumers may be looking at a long-term tariff premium on everything from groceries to electronics. There is also a psychological impact to consider. When people feel their purchasing power shrinking, they change their behavior. Families cook simpler meals, cut back on dining out, and postpone major purchases. Small businesses, already struggling with tight margins, are forced to innovate or risk closure. These shifts ripple through local economies, reducing demand for services and slowing down community-level economic activity. The result is a feedback loop. Higher prices lead to lower spending, which can ultimately drag on overall economic growth. Looking ahead, much depends on how trade negotiations unfold. If the US strikes new agreements with key partners like China, Mexico, and the European Union, some of these tariffs might be reduced or rolled back. But such negotiations are complex and can take months, if not years, to finalize. In the meantime, retailers and consumers alike are stuck navigating a landscape of unpredictable costs. A store owner in Michigan summed it up recently. "We can't plan for the future because we don't know what the next round of tariffs will bring. It's like building a house while the ground is still shaking." The open question is whether Americans will adapt or push back. Tariffs are often politically popular because they are framed as a way to protect domestic jobs and industries, but their hidden costs are becoming more obvious. As consumers see their grocery bills rise and their electronics cost more, will public opinion shift? Will policymakers face pressure to rethink these strategies, or will tariffs become the new normal, quietly reshaping spending habits for years to come? There's also the broader economic puzzle. Tariffs don't operate in isolation. They interact with interest rates, energy costs, and global supply chain pressures. If the Federal Reserve continues to maintain high interest rates to combat inflation, households will face a double squeeze: higher prices due to tariffs and higher borrowing costs. For many families, this combination could mean deferring major life decisions like buying a car, renovating a home, or even pursuing higher education. And yet, amid the frustration, there is a sense of resilience. People are finding ways to cope, switching to store brands, repairing old appliances, shopping second-hand, or simply buying less. While these adaptations may ease the short-term burden, they raise bigger questions about the long-term health of the US consumer market. When price sensitivity dominates every spending decision, innovation and product variety often suffer. Businesses cut corners to stay competitive, and consumers end up with fewer options. The end of this story isn't clear. Are these tariffs a temporary storm that will pass once trade disputes are resolved, or are they the beginning of a permanent shift in how Americans consume and spend? Will policymakers double down, seeing tariffs as leverage for long-term economic strategy, or will the growing frustration from everyday consumers force a policy pivot? One thing is certain: every time someone walks through a grocery aisle, scans an electronics shelf, or considers buying a car, they're experiencing the direct consequences of these trade battles. Tariffs, once seen as a distant tool of economic policy, have become an intimate part of daily life in 2025. The open question that remains is whether this is the new normal, or just the painful middle chapter of a larger economic story still waiting to be written. That's where we'll wrap up today's episode. Tariffs aren't just numbers on a policy sheet. They're reshaping the price of everything we touch, from the tomatoes on your dinner table to the laptop on your desk. As we've heard, consumers and small business owners alike are feeling the weight of these changes, often with no clear end in sight. If you're noticing the pinch in your own grocery bills or struggling to plan big purchases, know that you're not alone. These shifts are part of a larger story unfolding across America, and we'll continue to track it as it develops. Thanks for tuning in and spending your time with us. If this episode resonated with you, consider sharing it with a friend or leaving a comment about how tariffs are impacting your daily life. Until next time, take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.